for coming. Welcome you to Murphysboro High School. On behalf of Murphysboro Emergency Management and Jackson County Emergency Management, we appreciate everybody being here this evening. Turn it over to Mike York from National Weather Service.
Good, thank you, and thanks for coming on kind of a gloomy, rainy evening. We've got a lot of weather going on. I'll talk to you a little bit about that once we get started. Again, my name is Mike York, and if you have any questions about this, my email address is mike.york@noaa.gov. Just feel free to shoot me an email anytime. And so, how many of you have taken this before? Quite a few. Well, usually it's more than half, about half or a little more than half. So it'll be old hat to some people, and maybe to others, it'll be a whole lot to take in. Okay, I'll talk a little bit about the storm that's coming first. You probably already heard that there's a winter storm warning in effect. There's not much in the way of cold air yet. It's pretty mild outside, or at least compared to what we've had. Kind of rainy. We're ahead of the cold front, so we've got a mild south wind. We've got some rain. But that's going to quickly come to an end. The cold front's going to come flying through late tonight. Winds are going to turn north and pick up. It's going to be windy tomorrow, and temperature's going to plunge back to what we've been used to the last few weeks. So expecting some heavy snow Wednesday and Wednesday night. That's why there's the winter storm warning. And then after the snow, it's going to turn extremely cold, and wouldn't be surprised if it got down to 0 here in Murphysboro Thursday night. I think the official forecast for Carbondale is 3 degrees above 0 on Friday morning. And then, in case, then I promise it looks like spring is really going to get here next week. The official 8 to 14 day outlook from the Climate Prediction Center has well above normal temperatures, and we should have at least 50s, if not 60s here next week. So hang in there. We got one more storm and cold wave, and then I think winter's over. Of course, it's about time for it to be over anyway. Here's the snowfall forecast map generated by our office this afternoon. It's the latest map that we put out. If you're not familiar with our county warning area, this is the area that we cover, and I'll go into that in a little more detail later. But anyway, Carbondale's in the 6 to 8 inch range. Amounts will range from 4 to 6 inches up along I-64 to about 8 to 10 down toward the Ohio River. So this is more of a southern storm, and there'll be some sleet, maybe a little bit of freezing rain, but it looks like mainly snow. And it should all be during the day tomorrow into early tomorrow night up here, and may linger into Thursday down. It'll be last to end down here. It's going to end from northwest to southeast. So, okay, a little bit about storm spotting. If you haven't been to one of these classes before, storm spotting is difficult to do accurately on a consistent basis. There's just many, many different types of weather. Every thunderstorm weather situation is different, and no two situations are alike. Every storm season brings new learning experiences. You can't learn everything in one class, and I'm not going to try and show you everything in one class, but just try and, get nailed into your head the main things here that are the most important when it comes to storm spotting. So again, don't expect to be able to absorb everything. There's so much in this class that even if you've taken it before, if you've taken it, you already know that there's no way that you're going to remember everything. And feel free to ask questions, and if you do, you might have to jump up and down and wave to get my attention, but go ahead and do that, because I can't see my computer screen. I can only see this screen, so I'll be kind of looking up here a lot. Now, has everyone had a chance to get the white registration form? It looks like this, and it's on the table. It's on the center table in this room. If you didn't get one, I'd appreciate it if you at least put your name on it so that we can keep account of how many spotters we train. And that's the main reason why I like to get them, it's just so I know how many people we train. If you don't want to fill out your, you don't have to fill it out at all if you don't want, but if you just turn it in so that I know someone took the training, that's the main thing. And then we also have an online registration form. These on YouTube, if you go to that website, youtube.com/NWS Paducah, that's where all the safety training is at now. And we shortened the class probably by about 50 slides over the past couple of years. It's still a pretty long class. It's almost 2 hours. Still plenty long. But the second part of this is not as long as the first, so if you're getting tired or you need to get ready for the snowstorm or something, probably be about 30 minutes or so. All right, the supercell is the tornado producer. It's the type of storm that produces the long-lived, famous. Would be a spotter's dream to be able to see all this just like that. But you'll see the wall cloud, and if there is a wall cloud in a tornado, it's in the rain-free updraft part of the storm, and that's behind the rain shaft. So, not always, but normally a tornado occurs on the back side of the storm. The storm's moving from left to right, and the tornadic part of the storm is usually behind the main rain part of the storm.
Storms with strongly rotating updrafts, also known as supercells, develop when the wind veers or turns in a clockwise direction through the lowest mile of the atmosphere. When the wind speed is sufficiently strong and veering with height is present, horizontally oriented rolls develop in the lower levels of the atmosphere. When these rolls are tilted by a thunderstorm updraft into rotation about a vertical axis, a mesocyclone may develop. A mesocyclone is defined as an area of deep storm scale rotation, usually associated with a strong updraft.
Okay, so that's basically trying to explain why wind shear is needed for a storm to be severe. The wind kind of turns the updraft, kind of basically just turns the updraft. Thunderstorms are very vertical types of weather. They extend up to 10 miles in the sky. You can kind of think of a thunderstorm as an engine. The updraft is basically the fuel of the storm. That's where the warm, moist air is getting sucked into it. And then it exhales the cool air. And when the updraft base, which is the updraft base is the rain-free part of the storm in the back. And then where you see the heavy rain and the hail and the real black area is where the downdraft part of the storm is. So think of the updraft as basically the intake manifold. That's where the gasoline supply is, so to speak. Underneath that is where you have your wall clouds or your funnel clouds of tornadoes. And there's usually no rain coming out of that because the updraft is supporting the precipitation and hail. It's kind of being held up by the updraft. Whereas the downdraft, that's where you have your heavy rain, your hail. That's where the storm is exhaling all of the exhaust, so to speak. And sometimes you get downbursts there. The cool air may descend rapidly from the storm and hit the ground and spread out in the form of a downburst. And sometimes a small shelf cloud will precede that. Shelf clouds, I mentioned those when we were talking about squall lines, but they can also be with a supercell, but they'd be a lot smaller with a supercell, or at least shorter. So let's take a look at the characteristics of each type. Here's a time lapse of a supercell in Texas, and you can visually see the updraft because smoke from a grass fire is being ingested up into the storm. that smoke is getting caught up in the updraft and being sucked up into the storm. And notice there's no precipitation occurring where the updraft is. It's all being expelled on the right side on the forward part of the storm. It looks like you can even see a little rotation in the rain shield. Okay, so the updraft region is where the rain-free cloud base is. That's where you would have your wall cloud or your foam cloud if there was going to be one. And again, we're just talking supercells here. It's on the back side of the storm. It's underneath the big cumulus tower. You'll see upward cloud motion, and you may see rotation. You can visually judge updraft strength by looking at the cloud sometimes. If it has really crisp edges to it, like the one on the right, that's usually a strong updraft. It kind of looks like it's boiling upward. If you have an anvil and you see overshooting clouds punching up through the anvil, that's a very strong updraft. It's actually going up through the top of the atmosphere. And those are called overshooting tops if you see a cumulus tower overshooting the top of the anvil. Some low-level storm clues. If you're looking for wall clouds and foam clouds, really the best distance is about 3 to 8 miles from that. You don't want to be less than 3 miles away because you're too close, and it's partly dangerous and partly you don't have a good perspective of what you're seeing. If you're more than 8 miles away, you're too far to get a good look at it unless you have binoculars or something. So about 5 miles would be the optimal distance. But the rain-free base is the low, flat cloud base. There's little visible precipitation, if any, falling. And again, most storms are not supercells. So if you see a rain-free base, if it's not a supercell, it really isn't any need to be concerned. Anyway, the rain-free updraft is kind of vital for locating the wall clouds and other important features. What is a wall cloud? It's a lowering of the rain-free base, usually near the north side of the updraft, and it's attached to the cloud base. Usually they're about 1 to 4 miles across, and they may or may not rotate. So, again, a wall cloud, just think of it as a lowering of the thunderstorm cloud base, and it's attached to the cloud base. Some people get rotation confused with shear. If you see clouds moving in different directions, that doesn't automatically mean there's rotation. Shear is just when you have wind blowing in different directions. If you have clouds moving in different directions, that could just be because the wind is blowing in different directions. Rotation is circular. If you see circular motion, then you've got rotation. So, know that difference. That's very vital for knowing whether or not it's a wall cloud. And watch the cloud elements, like the cloud fragments. If you see them rotating about an axis, then you have, and if it's persistent, more than a couple minutes, then you have reportable rotation. And here's a couple good pictures of wall clouds. The flying saucer type picture on the left is very dramatic. Not very typical, but an excellent picture. And then the wall cloud on the right is more typical of what a wall cloud would look like. And again, it's in the right spot. You have your downdraft located on the right side of the storm, or the forward side of the storm, and the wall cloud in the rear. And that was in New Madrid County, by the way. So report rotating wall clouds because they are precursors, or possible precursors of tornadoes. Not every wall cloud will produce a tornado. In fact, most wall clouds do not produce a tornado. And some tornadoes can form without wall clouds. So here are some pictures. Many wall clouds form and they form in different ways. Sometimes wall clouds form when cloud elements develop beneath the main thunderstorm cloud base. Other times they descend from the cloud. So there's different ways that wall clouds form. They can either descend from the cloud base, or they can kind of develop from the ground up into the cloud. But to be a wall cloud, it has to be attached to the thunderstorm base. And rotation is organized and sustained. It's not a minute or two thing. By sustained, we mean more than 5 or 10 minutes. In a true supercell, the rotation usually lasts for at least an hour. Once a supercell gets going, it usually doesn't stop for a while. That doesn't mean it's producing a tornado the whole time. It just means that it's a rotating thunderstorm. Even if there is no wall cloud present, you will see low-level rotation before a tornado forms. A tornado, by definition, is rotating. Here's a time lapse of a developing tornado. But this is one with there's no wall cloud, but there is rotation around the tornado. And you can see basically the parent cloud has rotation about the tornado. So some characteristics of a tornadic wall cloud: it's persistent. 10 to 20 minutes might be the longest that you'll see it, because unless you're chasing it, because it'll usually move out of your vision, out of your sight range within that amount of time if you're not moving. And it's usually a visible swift rotation. Because that rotation is basically part of the updraft, you'll usually have a wind. If you're facing the storm, the wind will be at your back, blowing into the storm, sometimes 20, 30 plus miles per hour. And you'll usually see the cloud elements going up and down. You'll see, and I'll show it, there'll be some videos showing cloud fragments kind of being sucked up and then coming down. There's upward and downward motion.
That's a great, look at it, it's on the ground right there by the, oh my God. It's so quiet.
That's good. That's typical of what a wall cloud looks like in our area. If you were to see one, that's probably normally about what you'd see. And then this is a little bit more dramatic, but easily something like this could be in our area as well, but it's more, well, better developed, hanging lower, and also speeded up a lot. When it's speeded up, you can see the upward motion better. to remember with both funnel clouds and tornadoes is rotation. A funnel cloud is a rotating funnel-shaped cloud extending from the thunderstorm base. It has to be attached to the cloud base. It does not reach the ground, and it rotates. A tornado is a violently rotating column of air in contact with the ground. So the only difference between a funnel cloud and tornado is one is in contact with the ground and one isn't. But they both are rotating by definition. And sometimes the funnel is not always visible. Like in these pictures, the funnel cloud is only partly visible, but you can see a debris cloud at the ground. So apparently this is a tornado because the funnel cloud is producing a debris cloud at the ground. So it is in contact with the ground, even though you can't see it, other than the debris. Now, the downdraft region is also dangerous. You can get a lot of dangerous weather there, but not tornadoes, but you can get very heavy rain, you can get downbursts and hail, and it's the leading edge of the downdraft and sometimes marked by a shelf cloud. But this is the dark area. It's kind of the front part of the storm, part of the storm that you probably don't want to drive through if you're storm chasing, unless you want to get your vehicle dinged up by hail. Shelf clouds, again, they mark the leading edge of gusty winds from the thunderstorm. Just think of that leading edge of the shelf cloud. It's the leading edge of the cooler air. The reason the shelf cloud is there is because that cool air is condensing out the moisture in the atmosphere. And so it looks kind of like it looks like a shelf because it's undercutting that warm air. As the storm approaches, the shelf cloud's the first thing you would see a lot of times. It's that leading edge of rain-cooled air. So if you were located at that red X and you're a spotter and you're looking west toward that line of thunderstorms, odds are pretty good you would see the shelf cloud pictured at the top. You'd see that arc of cooler thunderstorm air rushing out toward you. And sometimes that would contain strong winds. Roll clouds are really rare, but they're caused by the same thing that causes shelf clouds. It's the leading edge of cooler air. It produces like a tubular shaped cloud that rotates about a horizontal axis. They're very rare. I've never seen one. But if you ever do see one, it's basically just the leading edge, cooler air coming out from the thunderstorm. It probably marks the leading edge of strong winds, but you don't know how strong, so it's not necessarily dangerous. All right, so to rehash here the difference between a shelf cloud and a wall cloud. The shelf cloud is the downdraft rush of cooler air. It moves away from the precipitation area, it's spreading out. It slopes and points away from the precipitation. Sometimes you get the shelf cloud pass over you before the rain starts. The wall cloud is where the rain-free updraft is. It's where you have your potential tornado. It does not move with respect to the precipitation area. Compared to the precip area, it doesn't really move toward or away from it. it kind of slopes a little bit toward the precipitation.
Storm spotters certainly need to be near enough to a storm to be able to monitor the most active part of a potentially tornadic storm. Very importantly, however, spotters must know the movement of the storm and have easy access to escape routes away from the storm's path. Severe storms usually travel toward the east or northeast. There are exceptions, of course, say with southward moving storms along a frontal boundary advancing from the north. Most severe storms, however, especially tornadic ones, are steered by upper-level winds, which most often blow from the west or southwest during severe weather events. Big storms move along in the steering flow and generally travel from southwest to northeast. Generally, it's a good idea for the storm spotter to stay on the south side of a storm and move eastward, staying just south of the updraft as the storm travels downstream. This provides a clear line of sight to the updraft area while not being in the direct path of the storm. Photographers may prefer a location that is south and a little east of the storm. This is because more sunlight is usually available west of the storm, and this provides good contrast for taking pictures. Attempting to plunge into a storm from the north or east is much more dangerous. Coming in from these directions means plowing through precipitation, which can be unbelievably intense. The interceptor can suddenly find zero visibility and blinding rain, and possibly destructive hail. The result can be an experience similar to this. Penetrating the storm blindly can also lead to a sudden confrontation with an unexpected tornado. Spotters should plan intercept routes that allow a good line of sight into the updraft while avoiding the discomforts of heavy and dangerous precipitation.
So here's kind of the core of the classes on how to actually spot. A typical supercell is kind of shaped like a comma cloud. Not all of them are, but they usually have like a hook echo on radar where the tornado would be. So that diagram on the left is kind of what you call a classic supercell diagram. So usually the southeast side of the storm would be where you'd be able to see the tornado without being in the path. That's assuming it's a northeastward moving supercell or eastward. Then you'd want to be southeast of the storm, looking into the updraft area. So you need to know where you are in reference to the updraft and downdraft. If you have access to radar, that would help a lot. You have to know which direction the storm is moving so that you can position yourself in the right place. Also being aware that supercells can change direction. And a spotter should be positioned so the thunderstorm's moving from your left to your right. So here's an example of, well, this is an actual radar image of a supercell along the Wabash River. It's along the Posey-White County line. Where the yellow house is located, that would be where the spotter could see into the updraft area and could see the actual tornado. And that, if he was there, maybe he would see something like the bottom right picture. If the spotter was in that blue house on the west side of the storm, all he's going to see is the downdraft. He's going to see what you'd see in the upper right picture. So if you're storm chasing, you would probably want to be in the yellow house. So here's an example of a spotter who was in the, I guess we'll call it the right place, although a little bit too close probably, but he's in the southeast part. He's in the area where he can look into the updraft area and taking video of a rotating low cloud. lot of times people mistakenly think that certain clouds are dangerous that aren't. And there are a lot of lookalikes that cause confusion, even among spotters. Knowing that it's rotating or knowing that it should have rotation is probably the key thing to know. But if you don't observe it long enough and you don't observe the lack of rotation, you could prematurely report a tornado.
Keep in mind that the goal of storm spotting is valuable lead time and the warning of people in danger. Sighting a funnel before it touches down and becomes destructive can certainly help to save lives. This is why accurate identification and reporting of funnels is so important to the warning process. The key word here is accurate. The spotter should be very cautious as to what is being reported as a funnel. Inexperienced cloud watchers have the tendency to report any dangling cloud fragment as a funnel. I guarantee that if you look hard enough at any storm, there will usually be some cloud feature that looks something like a funnel.
So the key is rotation. If there's no rotation, it is not a tornado. In this picture here, there is blowing dust or maybe even debris underneath the wall cloud. Scud clouds are scattered cumulus under deck. All that means is ragged shreds of clouds. They're basically innocuous and can happen in any weather situation. You could see them tomorrow. Any kind of low-hanging cloud fragment can look like a tornado. I mean, those pictures there may have been taken on a day like today. We had some low-hanging clouds today. But scud clouds, the key thing is they're detached from the cloud base. They're not attached like a wall cloud has to be. They're often very ragged or wind-torn or wispy, and they don't usually persist a very long time. They're not rotating. If they are associated with a thunderstorm, they may go up into the cloud, but otherwise there's not much notable about them. Here's some rain shafts, which are more common out west in a dry climate. We don't see rain shafts like that around here all that often, but sometimes you do, and they can kind of look like a tornado if you're not paying attention. And they're not rotating, and they're usually have nothing to do with an updraft. They're not part of the rain-free updraft. Your perspective can make a difference too. This is the same cloud feature taken from two different angles. In one angle it looks very fishy, in another angle it looks more like a shelf cloud. There's no rotation, and there's really no dangerous, as far as tornadic activity, nothing there. Now I have an interactive quiz. Are these funnel clouds or tornadoes? They are not rotating. They look real fishy at first, and obviously, if you saw one of these, you'd probably observe it for a while and see what it is, but in this case, they were not rotating. Okay, what is this feature, and it is rotating? That's a wall cloud that actually developed a very strong tornado about 15 minutes later. And that is it's in the perfect area. It's in the rain-free updraft, and you can see the downdraft on the right side. And what is that feature? Shelf. That's a classic shelf cloud, and that would be moving toward the photographer. And what are we looking at? Wall cloud or funnel cloud, but it could possibly be a tornado because you can't really see whether or not it's touching ground there.
Jump in the car! hope so.
Thank you, sir. Okay, just pull it and then get behind it. Come on.
What we're hoping is it's going to curve off to the north, but I don't know. We'll get ready to jump in my car.
I'm sorry.
That's for Grandma's house there. She's getting a basement now. I just told her. Okay. It's huge. It's huge.
What are we looking at here? Kind of a trick because it could really be anything, but this is the Joplin EF5 tornado that killed hundreds of people in 2011. It's just so massive and so close that it doesn't even look like a tornado. It just looks like a massive black cloud, and that was one of the worst tornadoes of this decade. Those types of tornadoes are sometimes called wedge tornadoes. They're just like, they're so massive and wide, they look like a big wedge. They don't have any resemblance of a funnel. I think maybe the tri-state tornado of 1925 probably looked like that. That was probably a wedge tornado. But if it was animated, you'd see rapid rotation and you'd see debris in the air and probably cars in the air. What are these? And there is rotation. Those are funnel clouds. This is a pretty long video, but it's an interesting video. Kind of hard to see rotation, but it looks like a funnel cloud with some debris at the ground. So it was an EF0 tornado.
Question for you.
Yeah.
You mentioned, I think, Brooklyn was a rain wrap tornado. If tornadoes like to come out of the rain-free base behind the downdraft associated
but where the tornado is basically is kind of in a dry slot, and a rain wrap tornado is when it goes from being a comma to the rain wraps completely around the tornado. So well, that's pretty much it. The comma, the lower part of the comma tail actually wraps around the tornado. That's usually toward the end of the tornado's life cycle. Okay, here's the next quiz question. You're driving along and all of a sudden you notice water covering the roadway. It looks to be high enough to be dangerous. Do you report it? Any kind of hazard, whether it be dense fog or anything, any weather that could cause property damage or injury, we want to be reported. Okay, question 2. Which of the following phenomena should you report? Thunder, funnel cloud, shelf cloud, frequent lightning. Only one. Funnel cloud is potentially dangerous. Thunder and lightning is associated with every thunderstorm, and a shelf cloud is not necessarily dangerous. It's just a leading edge of cooler air. Question 3, the day after a storm, you look out in your backyard and you notice 2 trees blown over. Do you report it? Yeah, we're always interested in post-storm reports because it helps us verify our warnings, even if it's the next day. Here's a tweet reporting weather, water on roads freezing, becoming extremely slick. And then another one says, my wife left a while ago, side road, complete solid ice, very slick. Well, it's very detailed and good, except that they didn't say where they were, so it has limited value, to say the least. This one is much more. This one's very good because it's very specific and it's very accurate. It was a measured wind gust, not an estimated gust. So we know for sure, well, sometimes you can get bad wind measurements, but overall it's a very helpful report. So here are the seven steps of highly effective spotters. Of course, the first rule is always to maintain your safety. There's nothing more important than being safe in a storm. But in order to do that, if you want to be a spotter or a storm chaser, identify the updraft and downdraft region of the thunderstorm. Once you've done that, determine the storm motion. Is it moving toward you or away from you? Make sure you're in a safe location so that you don't get underneath the rain-free updraft. Assess the strength potential, look for any signs of rotation, visible rotation in the updraft. Then watch the updraft for wall cloud or tornado, or watch the downdraft for strong winds and hail. And then the final step is to report what you've seen. And some things that may help, especially if you're a storm chaser, which is not necessarily what we're encouraging because that is inherently dangerous. But road maps or GPS will help you navigate your way around. NOAA weather radio is really good for getting the latest warnings. Binoculars help a lot for zooming in on wall clouds. Camera, watch or a clock. So, to make your report, obviously you need a cell phone or a radio. Then a report log or audio recorder. Spotter ID card, there's some on the table. And then a handheld anemometer is very useful as well. And then a few notes on nighttime spotting. Be really careful, I guess, is the main thing. Driving around at night is dangerous even on a good night. But a few helpful things you can do. You can note the wind. Did it change direction? If you noticed a change in wind direction, that could mean you went into the downdraft part of the storm. Know your directional relationship. Which way is the storm? Where is it going? Is it heading away from you, toward you? Mobile spotting at night goes without saying, that's dangerous. Look for signs of rising or rotating clouds. And of course, that's very hard to do without lightning because you can't see the clouds at night. So lightning is very critical. And if you see power flashes caused by breaking power lines, that's oftentimes a sign of a tornado. All right, that's the end of it, end of the course. Don't forget your certificates. There's certificates of completion on the table back there. They don't have your name filled out on them. You can put your name in if you'd like. And your spotter ID numbers, depending on what county you're in, Jackson County's number is 17077 and then -15. And that's so everyone has the same spotter ID number who lives in any given county. All it does is identify what county you're from.
Anybody have any questions for Mike?
Get ready, he's going to give away the radio, but I want a nice close-up on that.
Going to bed tonight. I'd like to, if we could, give Mike a round of applause. Did everybody sign in? Did everybody sign in the sign-in sheet? Yeah. Okay, so Brian, what do we have? 32. Dennis Ryan? Yeah. We've got a couple gentlemen here from a group. If you want to talk to them more about what they do some storm chasing in the region, basically called Storm. They donated a weather radio for us to give away. So you're the lucky winner. Dennis, you can come and grab it. Brian and I have two real quick things for everybody, just to kind of sidebar on a couple things that are going on for us. First and foremost, if you're from a fire department or from a local jurisdiction government-wise, if you don't know about the Jackson County Mitigation Plan update, or if anybody from your jurisdiction is participating in that, I want to talk to me at the end of it. We need to get your jurisdiction signed up to do that so you can get in the plan that way. If you ever want to apply for mitigation funds, you have to be part of the county's plan. To be able to receive those federal funds, those meetings are ongoing. If you happen to get a phone call from a lady named Amanda from SIU or a gentleman named Tyler from Great Asia Planning, he may be trying to find out how you're affiliated and why you were here, because everybody that signed in will be used as part of man hours or woman hours for grant match. But again, if your jurisdiction, if you don't know about it, you can find out when you go back home, and if you're not, you can call the office. I'll be willing to talk to you. We've sent a lot of information out. We haven't got some back from some folks, but it's really important for all the jurisdictions to be represented into that. Other than that, that's all I got. Again, thanks for coming. Brian's got a couple things that I think that he wants to discuss real quick.
Those of you that are from fire departments in Jackson County, many of you are receiving the pages as text messages on your cell phones. I know there was been a few questions out there on that. Particularly today, we sent out a message about the class this evening, and what happened was somebody recalled reply to that message as a text message. And when you do that, it sends that reply to everybody that received the original message. So what happens is everybody starts getting a whole bunch of messages and they have no idea who they're coming from. So if you can, spread the word to those in your departments that if they get one of those pages, it's best not to reply to that, to start a new message to somebody if you need to communicate with somebody. Also, another question that comes up is a lot of times on Sundays when County Dispatch does test calls, the pages are very delayed. The reason for that is Verizon Wireless sees a high number of connections coming from our mail server and thinks we're trying to send spam, so they delay the messages. So that's why when there's actually an incident, a lot of times you get it within a minute or two, but on test call days, sometimes it takes an hour or two. It's simply because Verizon Wireless is delaying that. We are working with them to try and get them to accept everything coming from our mail server, but if you've ever tried to work with Verizon Wireless on something, that's not real easy. If you are a member of a county fire department here in Jackson County and you guys are not getting the pages on your phone as text messages and you're interested in some more information on that, please see me. I'll be happy to get you all the information on that. And unless you guys have something else, thank everybody for coming out tonight, and hopefully we don't have too much snow to shovel tomorrow.